Welcome back to 388 Days. Today we're going to do something a little different. We've been thinking about ways to share our perspective and insights about our travel, as well as our journey to financial independence, which we haven't really talked about. And we decided that we were going to create a new series, which we're calling Are We There Yet? This is the first episode in that set of series, which is going to be ongoing. And today we're going to talk about ourselves, our background, how we met, and maybe a little bit about how we got to where we are today, which is full-time travelers sharing our story and adventures on YouTube. And if you're new to our channel, my name is Chris. This is my wife, Stephanie. And we've been on YouTube now for about 2 years, and we haven't really done an introduction video about ourselves. So let's get into it.
So we're going to ask each other a series of questions, and we do have them written down for reference so we don't forget, which is super easy to do when you're filming. So first question for you is, where are you originally from, and where did you grow up?
Great. So we're both from the United States, if that wasn't abundantly clear by our accents. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area and lived there most of my life through high school. And then I traveled down to Southern California, Orange County, which is near Los Angeles, I don't know, about 50...
Halfway between LA and San Diego.
And went to school down there for college. And I studied biological sciences, which is not at all what I ended up doing in my career, which we'll talk about a little bit later. I moved around a little bit, spent a little bit of time in Denver, Colorado. And then I moved back to Orange County because it just really felt like home. And I lived most of my life down in that area, which is where we ended up meeting each other. All right, so did I miss anything?
No, you actually were really more detailed than I thought you were going to be. I got to up my answer, I guess.
So back to you. Where are you from? Where did you grow up?
I was also born in Northern California, the Bay Area, and ironically, we were actually born about 30 miles away from each other, which I think is always kind of funny. And then my family ended up moving around a bit, and I ended up basically living anywhere that it was hot and sunny and people were tan, which I am not tan, and I don't think I have the genetic predisposition to be tan. So it was a little interesting at points. At the end of high school, I ended up going back to California, Southern California, and from the time of about 18, lived in Southern California, and then we ended up meeting a couple years after that.
All right, so the next question, which I find kind of interesting because you never want to share this information, but you're the one who actually wrote down this question.
Well, yeah.
So how old, and I don't actually really care, but how old are we? And I'll let you answer that for both of us.
We are in our early 50s. And I am slightly older than him, but we're still in our early 50s. So, and yes. we actually have been asked that question when we've been traveling, which I think is kind of funny.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of cultures, it's not as, what's the word, as frowned upon as it might be in the United States to ask somebody's age.
Or asking a woman how old she is.
Right.
I mean, I remember the first time someone asked, how old are you? I kind of went, oh. It was a little shocking, but kind of funny. So I answered them, and it's just.
Yeah. So next question, what did you, now we did quit our full-time jobs before we started traveling.
Yeah.
So what did you do for work?
Ask me that again.
What did you do for work?
So I was in the interior design industry for about 30 years, mainly in purchasing, procurement, planning, that type of thing. And I've come to realize now that those skills have definitely helped in our planning, our travel planning, for sure, definitely. Mm-hmm. And what did you do for work?
So I mentioned that I went to school and I studied biological sciences, but along the way I had always been into computers, and for whatever reason I didn't major in computer science, but I happen to be very fortunate. I think we're both very fortunate in the country that we grew up, in the cities that we grew up, and our life has been, I would say, somewhat easy compared to many, many other people in the world because of that. And again, the time that I was graduating, which was in 1997, I think, it was right as the internet was taking off. And so there was like, basically, if you had a heartbeat, you could get a job in the computer industry.
Except for me, not me.
But I had been doing a lot of computer work along the way. So I would say I was reasonably savvy. And at that time I was moving around, actually ended up in Colorado, where I got a job at what was kind of a startup in the internet advertising industry, which, you know, now is huge. I mean, like, that's kind of how Google makes all of their money. And it was really one of the pioneers in that. Unfortunately, it didn't really go very far, primarily because of the dot-com bust. But my career was really in IT infrastructure, and IT security. The last role I had, which after I moved back to Orange County, I worked for maybe 25 years or so. The last role I had, I was a vice president. I worked supporting IT security, managing that, as well as our IT infrastructure and cloud computing initiatives that we had. So I'm kind of the tech in the household.
Kind of? No, he is the sole source of tech in our household.
So yeah, anything technology related I tend to work on, which has been very helpful for us. We can solve almost all of our problems along the way. I really enjoyed my career, but that career was also one of the reasons why we really became interested in financial independence, and what kind of moved us more towards the direction of retiring early, was just because of the pressure of running, you know, an infrastructure that needed to be 100% up all of the time. And if it wasn't, you know, you're potentially losing millions of dollars in business very, very quickly. So it was a very high pressure job. Yeah. And but I have to say, I really enjoyed it. It was really adrenaline filled. There was a lot to do. And, you know, as when I would come in every day, I never knew quite what I was going to be doing. So it was really fun, and I was learning all the time. It's one of those careers where you just have to keep moving, because if you don't, the technology surpasses you, and you fall behind very quickly.
Yeah. I was also really tired of him getting calls in the middle of the night, which happened a lot.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the responsibilities, is not necessarily being on call as an engineer, but being on call as a responsible leader in an organization, and being able to kind of manage, you know, outages and other kind of major issues. So, you know, those things did happen, and, you know, working in a company that was global, you know, a lot of times there's no off time, right? You've got Southeast Asia or Asia Pacific coming online as you're going to bed, and so, you know, as it goes across so, you know, you might get a call at any time. So it was fun and exciting, but I think we were ready for a change.
Yeah. So that, I'm going to skip a question here. We'll get back to it. So that kind of segues into how did we end up as full-time travelers? So burnout for sure. As you just heard, lots of stress in both of our jobs. I ended up, my last actual job, I ended up as the national purchasing manager for a very large company. And that was a lot of stress, especially just coming out of the ends of COVID, still dealing with a lot of supply chain issues. Yeah, it was kind of crazy. So that just kind of burnout and stress and thinking, is this really what we want to do? Do we want to feel like this for the rest of our lives? And at the same time, there was really the emergence of the FIRE movement, the financial independence, retire early movement. And, in our off time with the questioning, what do we really want to do? We started to explore those avenues. And it was really very, very eye-opening and made us kind of sit up and go, oh, maybe we could do this.
We're going to do an entire episode about our journey to financial independence, what we did, what we invested in, how we achieved that goal. And it's really going to be probably more tailored towards a U.S. audience, because we're going to talk about some of the things that we invested in, but maybe interesting for anyone. It was more achievable than I think we expected. Mm-hmm. The biggest obstacle for us is that I don't think either of us really knew what to invest in, how to invest. This whole idea, I think, started maybe around 2015, and we really didn't. We didn't really know. We kind of knew what we wanted to do, but we didn't really know how to achieve it. And it took a while. And I think one of the things in starting this new series is we wanted to at least share that information. Again, we're not financial experts, and we're certainly not certified financial planners, but sharing our journey and sharing our experience, I think for a lot of people it's doable, but you have to make some very conscious decisions in how you live your life. Changes that we made in very consciously thinking about how we spent money, and that was all in an effort to get us to the point where we could really kind of lead what we believe to be our best life possible, doing things that we wanted to do and having that freedom to spend time with family and freedom to explore. And that was really our goal in all of this.
So back to the question that I skipped.
What was that question?
How did we meet?
Oh, yeah.
You go first.
Yeah, so, I don't actually remember. I think we may have met around 2010.
2010 we met.
I think we met in 2010.
We did. Sometime during 2010.
So I'm going to share a little bit more personal stuff in my life. I had gone through kind of a breakup that was pretty rough for me. And I was really trying to figure out how to kind of like mentally decompress. I had a lot of just frustration and anger and a busy job at the same time, and which was stressful. And, I was working out. I was in pretty good shape, but I still just had like this, just a lot of frustration around that. And someone recommended that I should try yoga, and it was kind of like, yoga, that's weird. Like, how is that going to help me? I wasn't very open-minded, but I got to this point where I just said, okay, let me do this. And again, this is just sort of where the luck kind of plays into it. There was this yoga studio nearby where I lived, and I looked it up, and I was going to try to take a class. I had no idea what I was doing. And there was this class out there, and I think it's the only time they offered it, called Yoga for Men. And I was like, well, of course, sign me up for that. It's just more approachable as a man, definitely I was self-conscious about going to yoga, expecting that there would be almost all women there, which, for the most part, there were when I went to yoga classes. But there was this instructor there, and she was just amazing. We did some, I would say, kind of sophisticated yoga poses that were really challenging. But because I was in shape, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing I've ever done. I was so into it. And part of the reason was because you're just so present, you're so focused on what you're doing, that all of those other thoughts and kind of the frustration just sort of melt away. And it was really life-changing for me. So I enrolled, and I started going to yoga classes, 3 to 4, 5 times a week. I did some private lessons with this instructor, and she really helped me kind of hone my practice. And honestly, it completely changed my life. I have to say it's pretty sad that I allowed myself to kind of get out of yoga over the past few years, which is a little disappointing because it is honestly life-changing. And so I know this is sort of a long-winded way of talking about how we met, but it's very relevant. I don't know how long I was practicing, but one of the teachers there, who is now a pretty good friend of ours, at the time, she was suggesting that I ask this girl out that was in yoga, and it was Stephanie. And she seemed like a pretty nice girl. I mean, I attended a lot of classes, so I knew a lot of people, and I was like one of maybe 2 or 3 guys there.
He stood out at the studio because there weren't a whole lot of men there at the time. Yeah.
And so, I mean, pretty much everybody knew who I was. So, I knew people, they were acquaintances, and I had this yoga teacher who was, I would say, a pretty good friend, and we still keep in touch. She's really great. And she had recommended that I ask this girl out, and I really kind of struggle with it because I'm like, this is my space. This is the space I've built for myself. It's not about trying to pick up women. It's not about dating. And I really struggle with that. And finally I was like, you know what, I'm just like nervous. I'm going to do it, but boy, that was really hard to do. I called this girl, and she was like, I asked her out, and she was like, yeah, sure. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, this is great.
You really can pick up women in yoga class.
Yeah, I know. And I honestly don't recommend that. But, and then I don't know how long it was. A couple of days later, she called me back. She's like, yeah, no, I'm not going to go out with you. And I just don't think she was I don't think she was ready for that. And so then I was like, man, this sucks. Like, what am I going to do? Like, have I just messed up the yoga studio? But by that time I had actually started practicing somewhere else that was a little bit more advanced, and I was trying to kind of branch out. So things were changing for me, but to kind of round all of this up, I know Stephanie was kind of going through some changes in her life, and relationships changes, and I can't quite remember. I think we ended up going to this chanting.
You're really getting detailed into how we met.
Yeah. Well, I'm just trying to kind of think through it. I think we went chanting up in Los Angeles, which was really fun. But it's like, I would say, like, most people would look at that and laugh and say, oh my God, that is so LA. That is
I can't actually believe you're saying this right now.
It was so LA. But honestly, it was really like, just kind of spiritually changing to go to this place, and just, I don't know, just like a lot of really positive energy in the room. And you go to this place and everybody's kind of singing and chanting. And I think we ended up driving up together, just kind of carpooling up for some reason. That was the first time we ended up talking together, and I knew who you were.
Like really talking, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I knew who you were. I knew who you were in the class. I'm going to say it, but I thought you were like the typical Orange County wife who lived in a really like big mansion and, had a lot of money, because, I mean, it was kind of an
Orange County yoga class, and back in the day, that's pretty much kind of what it
Right.
was. But I'm going to cut you off there because what I was going to say is we met in yoga class, and one day we hadn't talked. I mean, see each other in class, and then we were waiting for class to start, and he was standing there and just looked kind of uncomfortable in the room, because I mean, I think he was like the only guy there at the time. And I thought, gosh, he just looks so uncomfortable. So I just went over and started talking to him. And that's what I was going to say. That's my answer. We met in yoga class, and I just started talking to him.
We just started it more as like kind of acquaintances, and then friends, and then started sharing more information. And then, of course, we had our yoga instructor, who we were both kind of, I don't know, co-friends with. Yeah, we were both friends with. And so we started hanging out with her, and we'd go to her house, and then we were just sort of together doing things.
She was almost like the matchmaker, sort of.
If you ask her, she was the matchmaker.
Yeah.
And
we will give her credit.
If it hadn't been for her, I think we probably wouldn't have spent that much time together. So we'll give her credit.
We'll give her credit for that one. Okay, moving on. Is there anything
right.
they don't know about us at this point? Let's see. What was the biggest challenge for you as we planned and saved for financial independence?
Well, once we got to this point where we knew what we needed to do, we were kind of on autopilot, right? We were saving money, and we knew at some point we would attain sort of that financial independence goal, but there was a lot of anticipation along the way, just playing that waiting game, and I was becoming more and more burnt out at work.
Yeah.
So that was really a struggle because, the end was in sight, but what we did, we didn't have some like magic wand that we waved to get us to financial independence. It was just a lot of saving and waiting for the market. And I mean, it's really about time. And I think, it took us 5 or more years to get to that point. And that, that was sort of the countdown. We just sort of continued to wait. And then of course so for me, it was just like the anticipation of, and this kind of the stress of like, I know we're going to get there, but can I do one more year? I really needed a break. I felt like I needed a sabbatical. And so, even taking a year off would have been great. And I probably would have done that if I had been able, but it just wasn't an option where I was working. Taking time off really wasn't an option. So I think that was just the pressure. And then the pressure that I was putting on myself to like get to retirement, even though there wasn't a lot I could do. It was like, just like, what else can we cut? What else can we save? I think it was just a lot of personal pressure that I put on myself, pushed me more and more.
Yeah.
What about you?
For me, it was retail therapy. Stopping retail therapy, which is huge for a lot of people. And that was hard. Also, downsizing. That was really, really hard. I like things. I still really like things. But Chris is very clever in our downsizing. He finally realized that if he wanted me to get rid of something, not because he thought I should get rid of it, but because it really wasn't necessary. And I knew in my heart some of these things really weren't necessary. I mean, how many turkey platters does one person need, honestly? But he would say, if you really need it, I'll buy it for you again. And I went, oh, that's perfect. I can get rid of this thing that I've had for, 20 years. And honestly, I don't think there's been one thing that I've asked him to buy me again because I needed it so badly after I got rid of it. So that was key. That was a big key thing. I think he just really was able to see what my hurdles were, and he kind of helped me get over them. The retail therapy is still a challenge sometimes, but that's what it was for me. Those things.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned the countdown was like a big thing, like the anticipation, and that's actually why we named our channel 388 Days, is because we got to a point where we knew we had kind of achieved our goal, and we basically needed to continue what we were doing and sort things out, and that the countdown number became 388 days until we could essentially retire.
And that was a big day and a very big step, because Chris had been working from home for quite a while, and I would come home from work and he would say, I've been doing the math. And I went, oh my, because every time he said that, it was 3 years. And then it was 5 years. Maybe we could do it in 2 years. Then it was 8 years one day, and I said, stop. Just stop. When you feel comfortable, you let me know.
Yeah. So we really kind of locked it in at 388 days, and that's why we named the channel 388 Days. And we keep having to explain it. So it may not have been the best name for a YouTube channel.
We thought it was nice at the time.
But for us, it was like, this is really cool.
It's very meaningful for us, the name of the channel.
All right, let's see. Next question. I'm going to ask you this question. We have been traveling now. We have been traveling now for over 2 years. Mm-hmm. What is the most challenging 1 or 2 things about full-time travel?
Oh, I would say retail therapy. Honestly, it's a big stress relief for a lot of people. It's a quick fix to feel good, and there are nice shops all over the world. Really, really, there really are. And not buying things for a quick fix that's hard. One thing that does help is having a very finite space in your luggage. That really helps because at some point you really just can't squeeze anything else into the suitcase. Also, adaptation to a point. It's very easy sometimes, but in the beginning, I think it was hard to get out of a very regimented mindset because with what I did for a living, there was a progression. It was A, B, C, D, and there was some adaptation and there was some, you have to do stuff on the fly, but I kind of liked it being regimented. So adaptation sometimes was a little hard. And for you?
I think for me, it's just the constant change. You're moving around and you have to be adaptable, as you said, but there's not a home base to go to. So you're never going home. You're always going to the next place, which you don't necessarily know what the next place is going to be.
And sometimes you think you know, and it doesn't end up being that.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, we are in a great place now. We're shooting this in Krakow, Poland, so stay tuned. We've got some cool video coming from our 2025 travel itinerary, but we love the place we're in right now.
So comfortable.
It's amazing. We'd like to stay longer. The place we came from, not as lovely. The place we're going to looks lovely, but we don't really know, right? Trying to figure out what to eat, especially if you're going out to restaurants, can be challenging. And I know that may sound a little bit like we're sort of complaining, but I think it's the logistics can be really stressful.
It's decision fatigue.
Right. You're on a plane, you're on a bus, you've got a schedule that you've got to keep because you're meeting somebody to get into wherever you're staying at a certain time. And so there are all these kind of time-bound constraints that you need to meet. And you're doing that, month over month. I can only imagine what the travel vloggers who are like staying in a place 2 or 3 days and keep bouncing around, because we were doing that in Vietnam, and we were moving quite a lot more, and there were so many logistics in there. We kept joking that it was like, something's going to break here. I mean, it never did.
Fortunately, it never did. And he planned Vietnam and the trains, everything. I don't know how he did it. He gets a big gold star.
But if you're interested in Vietnam, you should check out that series because we moved around a lot in that country. We loved it. But that's a great example of a lot of logistics. And I think that's probably the most challenging thing for me, was adjusting to that.
Yeah.
Coming from a place where we had an apartment, where we had everything we needed.
Yeah. Or if you didn't have it, it was easy to get.
Right.
Yeah.
True. And arriving in a place that doesn't have all of the essentials that you might expect, like a knife, right? I mean, it could be as simple as there are no knives.
Or a knife that actually cuts.
Right.
And the tip isn't bent because someone decided to use it as a can opener. Shocking how much that actually happens. So, okay, next question. What is something you have learned about yourself over the past few years of full-time travel?
I think kind of one of the things that I learned about myself that's surprised me a bit is just how flexible I could be, because I can be very regimented. I do like structure, and that's a little difficult moving around. You come up with a sort of a daily routine, and you can do it for 30 days, and then you move to the next place, and that may not be possible anymore. Yeah. You may not have a place to work out. You may not have a place to walk in the morning for whatever reason. You may not, exercise may be more difficult because you don't have any space in the place you're staying. And I think what surprised me is how flexible I can be with things that change all the time. Travel itineraries sometimes have to change. We've changed numerous times this year with our travel plans. We had an amazing year planned, and I think we've ended up in almost
none of the places
that we had planned to stay.
Nope.
We've had to change Airbnb locations. We've had to change flights.
Yeah.
We were kicked out of one of our Airbnbs.
Well,
I mean,
we weren't kicked out.
Well,
the host had to cancel for a variety of reasons. Had nothing to do with us.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I'm glad you pointed that out because that sounded kind of weird.
Kicked out.
Yeah,
wow.
Exactly. So right, those types of things, and I think I've just become more relaxed in that. You know what? We'll just figure it out when we get to a place. If we need something, we can buy it. They do actually sell all of the things that you can get in the United States in the countries that we visited. We haven't actually, surprisingly, never been to a country where they didn't sell the essentials.
We have always been able to find toothpaste.
Right, which is funny when you're traveling from the United States. Yeah. I think I don't know if that's an American thing.
Well, I think I'm going to interrupt you here for a second.
Can I just say what it is?
Okay.
Which is that you pack for every contingency, right?
That's what
you have everything packed in your suitcase.
Well, you go with the mindset. I think a lot of people start out, I mean, even if you're just going for vacation, it has to be perfect. I have to have the perfect packing list and the outfits, and it has to be this, or should I do a capsule wardrobe, or should it be quick drying, fabrics? It's always the reach of the perfect. And I think I'm going to take over the question here. It's my turn. I think, what was the question? What's been most surprising about yourself? Or what have you learned about yourself?
What have you learned about yourself that has genuinely surprised you?
It doesn't have to be perfect. I think for me, that was a big thing. I mean, even now, I will get on YouTube when someone's got a packing video or The Secret or 5 things you have to have. And I look at them and I'm like, okay, yeah, those things could be applicable. And I think in the transition of traveling full time and the getting away from retail therapy and the thought that it has to be perfect. It has to be perfect before you start. That's an enemy for full-time travel, I think, honestly. You have to adapt, and being able to adapt it's been nice, actually. It gives you a lot of freedom that it doesn't have to be perfect, and you can go with the flow or roll with the punches or however you want to put it. You just have to relax a lot, I think, and not take things as seriously. So for me, I think one thing that's been surprising is I've actually become a lot more comfortable in my own skin, and there's no one to impress, and just the thought of having to impress somebody, which I think is very common for, I think, most people, just kind of letting go of that. And, if he doesn't like the pants I'm wearing, I only have 3 or 4, so it doesn't matter what he thinks, honestly. And just be more comfortable, really, and knowing that you can get what you need and realizing that you really don't need as much as you've always thought, I think.
All right, next question, which is, what is something you really admire about your partner?
Is this a setup?
It might be.
He is very smart. So smart. Obviously he's the IT guy, but just in financial things, he's very smart. Technology, he's very smart. He knows how to talk me off the ledge, which is very smart. He's very smart, intuitive, very caring. There's a lot to admire. A lot to admire about him. And I don't know what he's going to say right now, so we'll see what he has to say.
So I think I have a hard time describing this, but Stephanie's very grounded and supportive, and she knows exactly how to read where I am. So she knows exactly what I'm thinking.
I always carry snacks.
And yeah, I do have a problem with getting a little hangry sometimes. And so, yeah, I need to be fed. But she knows kind of my mood and can sense it. And she's very supportive when things don't necessarily go the way that we're planning. I think we both kind of can counterbalance each other in that respect, because I tend to kind of emotionally go one way, and I think she kind of emotionally goes maybe a slightly different way, and we tend to kind of maybe have skills in those different areas. And I mean, she's just been very supportive. Honestly, I don't know how she puts up with me sometimes, because I can be difficult, but she's been a super supportive partner, very caring. And I think, and honestly, she's also very interested in the places that we go and the travel that we do, and coming up with like interesting things to see and do, which I think really helps me kind of open my eyes to new things. So I think we just complement each other really well.
I think we do. And honestly, traveling with someone is the best way to get to know them. Seriously, it really is the best way to get to know somebody, because you figure out how they are when they're under stress, when things aren't going well. Are they nice to people? Are they nice to you? Are they nice to themselves? It's really, if you're not sure about the person you are with, or if you want to know what's going to last, either put together some IKEA furniture or take a trip with them that's more than just a weekend and see how it goes. We have assembled IKEA furniture. That was the first step.
We're still together.
That didn't, and it was a big dresser or desk, something. And after this travel, yeah, I think we just complement each other very well. That was very nice. Thank you.
So some people have asked what country we see ourselves permanently retiring to. Do we have an answer for that?
We do actually have an answer for that. We actually get asked that quite a bit. And we've decided that in the end, we'll probably go back to the United States. One, because it's familiar, honestly. It's where we grew up. We know the system works. And I think that's a big thing when you travel places, is you don't know how things work. Like the things you grow up with, like, do you walk into a restaurant and just sit down? Do you have to wait to be seated? Is it appropriate to taste something in the market or even touch the fruit before you put it in a bag? So there are little things like that you can learn through observation and trial and error. Do you get yelled at? But just the general familiarity, I think, has made us realize we probably do want to go back to the United States. And also that's where families are. And that's really important to us. So yeah, the US. Other places do have a lot of attractive features to them. So we'll go and spend a couple months there a year if we can. But the US is probably where we'll end up.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, every country we've traveled to has problems, and we have a long list of things that we would consider problems in the United States. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of freedom there. We know it. It's a great place to live. When you're looking at places to live worldwide, and again, family is there, so it's difficult to say we would want to move somewhere else. I mean, every time we return, we love going to visit Trader Joe's, which is like our favorite place to shop. Yeah. And it's so exciting. It's like a treat to see what special thing they have. I mean, I think when I return, I get kind of excited about the things that we get to do there.
Yeah.
It's fun, partially seeing family and partially just kind of enjoying the things that we didn't get to enjoy while we were traveling.
Yeah, I think we actually have seen our families more and for a longer duration since we retired and have been traveling than we did when we were working full time, because we just didn't have the time to be able to go spend several weeks with our respective families. So that was actually really kind of surprising.
And it's higher quality time.
Yeah,
too.
Definitely.
I mean, the quality time, because we can be completely present most of the time, unless we're travel planning. we can be almost completely present. We're not worried about being on call and working, or even the things I've had to do where I've had to work during times that we were visiting family in the past.
Or you're expected to read your email when you're on vacation, kind of thing, which is that's like expected in the United States. Yeah, so we would retire in the United States.
And in terms of our travel plans, I think we don't have an end date, but initially when we were talking about this, we thought, we're gonna travel for about 5 years, and then we're gonna kind of think about what we want to do next. Is it something we want to continue to do, or do we want to modify that? Can we afford to retire in the United States? I mean, a lot of that's market dependent. So we'll see what happens, but we plan to travel for the foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm. All right, last question. What is your favorite food?
So this is a tough one. I had to think about this question because I love to eat and I love international cuisine. And I could I have a long list of things that I really, really like, but I kind of keep coming back to the same thing. It's something that I think we tend to talk about doing when we go back to the United States, although you can get this food in a lot of different countries, and we've had some really good examples of it where we've traveled. And that, for me, is wood-fired pizza. I absolutely love it. It's like I don't know, it's great alone. It's great with like a nice glass of wine. It's just something I love. And if you can find good wood-fired pizza, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
What about you?
I had to really think about this. I mean, I love sweet things. But that's not actually my answer. So my favorite food is actually comfort food. Like food like your grandma made or your mom made when you were growing up. Just something that you take a bite and you're like, okay, everything's all right now. And that actually, comfort food varies from different country to different country. I mean, if we're, depending where we are in Europe, like a good schnitzel and potatoes, or really good bread, or a good stew. We're here in Poland right now, and just the soups and stews, they're just amazing. So just really think, for me, anything homey and comforting, and food that's like a hug, I guess. So I think those are all of our questions.
Yeah, that's it.
If there is something we haven't talked about that you would like to know, please ask us. Leave a comment, and we will answer. We will answer all of your questions. And anything else you want to add?
Check back in about a week, because we're going to be releasing the first video in our 2025 travel series, which is going to be exciting. I think it's a great video. We're just putting the finishing touches on it.
He's putting the finishing touches on it.
And you're proofing it, as you usually do, and making great recommendations. So check back in a week, and we hope to see you back on the channel.
So thanks for watching. If you liked this, please consider subscribing and give us a like, and we will see you in the next one. How long was that?
I don't know.
Please tell me you were recording it.
I kept thinking about that along the way.